On February 24, 2022, a column of tanks and armored vehicles carrying Russian soldiers crossed the Belarusian-Ukrainian border and rapidly moved further south toward the town of Pripyat and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Kicking up radioactive dust, heavy military equipment and its crew rolled along the most contaminated area, that of the Red Forest. Although a vast area around Chernobyl is off limits to anyone who does not work there or has special permission, the Red Forest is considered so highly contaminated that even the nuclear plant workers are not allowed to go there. The radiation levels there are so high that in just 24 hours of doing nothing, a person can be exposed to the annual maximum recommended dose of radiation. Radiation poisoning can cause a variety of effects depending on the strength and length of exposure. Nausea, vomiting, and fever are common, and in more extreme cases, it can lead to internal bleeding and skin burns. Long-term effects have been linked to cancer and cardiovascular disease. Also, these people can even be dangerous to other people. They can expose others to radiation, adding that the radioactive soil can be spread around by animals as well. No precautions were taken to keep Russian soldiers safe. They wore no protective gear, which would have prevented them from being exposed to radioactive particles, the timeless remainder of the 1986 nuclear accident that destroyed the plant's reactor number 4. On day 1 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Chernobyl was among the very first territories taken in the still ongoing war. As if a nuclear disaster site can be seized, as if it does not seize whomever and whatever is in its vicinity in advance, dictating its own rules of a deadly game. The occupying powers will discover the habitability of the post-nuclear site the hard way once they start experiencing the unmistakable symptoms of radiation sickness. But for now, they are exhilarated with an easy victory, having negotiated the surrender of dozens of Ukrainian National Guards and of the workers who maintain the nuclear power plant. Just as they were settling into the place, or non-place, that will be unfit for human habitation for at least another 20,000 years, Russian soldiers were busy with an absurd task: digging trenches in Chernobyl. Why trenches in Chernobyl? Within the twisted logic of Vladimir Putin's war, the strategic rationale was evident. The exclusion zone, in particular the territories adjacent to the exploded reactor, were to become the staging grounds for attacks that would be invulnerable to Ukrainian counterattacks, who, after all, would return artillery or any other sorts of fire emanating from there. More or less the same reasoning organizes reckless military activities around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest of its kind in Europe. However, in recent times, even in the best Russian plans, there has to be at least one big drawback. When the Russian soldiers dug their trenches, they inadvertently removed a natural barrier, the top layers of soil that had formed over highly contaminated ground containing radioactive waste. The trenches dug in the earth that used to serve as a grave for contaminated radioactive earth are also graves, in the first instance, for their diggers. By creating bunkers and dugouts in the exclusion zone, the troops are presumably protected from enemy fire, but they are exposed to the invisible enemy, the radioactive particles they inhale and ingest. By using the vicinity of nuclear facilities in Chernobyl, or more recently, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, as a military theater of attacks that preclude counterattacks, commanders in the army play with fire, in the most literal sense of the expression. With heavy losses and the inability to make further progress, Russia withdrew its forces from Kiev and Zhytomyr oblasts, and on April 2, 2022, after 5 weeks of occupation, Ukrainian forces regained control of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Employees of the Chernobyl nuclear plant say Russian soldiers showed signs of radiation poisoning during their occupation. They say some developed huge blisters and were vomiting after ignoring warnings about digging trenches in radioactive soil. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Also, visit our second channel with military power comparisons. See you next time.